You don't notice the chaos right away. He enters silently, with an angelic smile and a beauty that paralyzes. She arrives and the atmosphere changes. Everyone looks, everyone wants her, but no one understands. No one sees what's behind the sparkle in her eyes, the perfect body and the enchanting voice. Feminine beauty, so worshipped, so desired, can actually be the most sophisticated shell of a bomb ready to explode. And when it explodes, it's not just her who pays the price. It's the world around her. The beautiful woman, the one who seems to have it all, is often also the most unstable, unpredictable, emotionally volatile. Crazy? Maybe, or maybe conditioned. Conditioned by a society that has never had the courage to tell the truth. A society that kneels before aesthetics and would rather lie than lose access. The result? A woman who lives in a parallel reality, built on empty compliments, false promises, and an avalanche of gratuitous validation. A woman who has been taught to believe that the world exists to serve her, but who, deep down, feels that she is always on the verge of an internal collapse. As Nietzsche wrote, what is good? Whatever increases power. And beauty gives power, but power without limits corrupts. If you think all this is an exaggeration, read on. Because in the next few minutes, we will dissect the phenomenon that turns beauty into a curse. We will understand why, the more perfect a woman seems on the outside, the more broken she can be on the inside. And above all, we will reveal the dark secret that keeps these women hostage to themselves and to the men who do not have the courage to free them. You will leave this video with a vision that few have the courage to face. Beauty doesn't just open doors, it unlocks the vault of illusions. When a woman realizes, even in her teens, that she only needs to exist to be desired, the world begins to bow down before her. Older men look at her differently, teachers change their tone, peers become emotional servants. But she is still a child. She doesn't understand the nature of the power she has just conquered. She only feels its effect. And the effect is addictive. This is the critical point. Her brain is still developing, emotionally immature, but the reality around her already treats her like a goddess. No one dares to say what they think anymore. No one imposes limits anymore. After all, to contradict a beautiful woman is to put at risk what everyone secretly wants from her: attention, approval, or the dream of conquest. In this invisible game, the first crack appears in the beautiful woman's mind. She begins to live in a universe where the truth does not enter, because the truth does not get laid. As Dr. Orion Tarabon explained, they live surrounded by men who would rather lie than lose access. The lie here is not the classic, blatant, obvious one. It is subtle, elegant, socially acceptable. You are right, you are wonderful. No one would ever tell you otherwise. And they don't say it, because saying it would imply taking a risk. And risking honesty in this context is losing power. Society teaches, it is better to keep the peace and stay close than to tell the truth and be discarded. The analogy is perfect. Imagine working in a company where the boss is fragile, unstable, and narcissistic. You know that a simple suggestion can be interpreted as an attack. What is your choice? Sincerity or survival? You praise, pretend to agree, camouflage your intelligence. You do this to preserve your position. And her? She is that boss. Only she didn't ask for it. She was transformed into this. At this point, beauty becomes a golden curse. She lives wrapped in convenient lies, but these lies destroy her ability to see the world as it really is. If no one points out her mistakes, how would she learn from them? If all external frustration is invalidated by internal flattery, how would she build a solid emotional foundation? You may even feel angry with this woman, but before that, feel sorry for her. Because beauty can be a gift, but without truth, it becomes torture. Nietzsche said that whoever has a why faces any how, but when a beautiful woman has no why, only consequences without an apparent cause, she gets lost in the labyrinth of the ego. Increasingly protected from the real world, increasingly vulnerable to her own emotions. And there is a cruel detail in all this. The more beautiful she is, the more powerful she feels, and the less prepared she is to deal with any resistance. The result? Emotional instability, existential crises, erratic behavior. This is where the stereotype of the crazy beautiful is born. But it does not come out of nowhere. It is the reflection of a collectively constructed system. She becomes emotionally dysfunctional, not because of weakness, but because of excess validation. It is like a child who has never heard the word no, trying to rule an internal empire of growing insecurities. And the most ironic thing? The same men who create this stage of lies are the first to abandon her when they realize that beauty does not compensate for instability. The cycle is cruel. She seduces, fascinates, but does not sustain, because no one taught her how to sustain. No one said, hey, this behavior destroys relationships. No one said, you are not right just because you are beautiful. And when the collapse happens, when the prince turns into a frog, when the applause turns into silence, she does not understand why. She feels that the world has betrayed her. But she was the one who was betrayed from the beginning. This woman lives in a theater. A spectacle built by male convenience and sustained by emotional omission. A theater where she is the star, but also the prisoner. And the more time passes, the harder it is to escape the role. Because now, telling the truth is not only useless, it offends. And who dares to point the mirror? Who faces the reaction of a goddess unaccustomed to frustration? The chaos has not yet exploded, but it is accumulating energy. Because a woman who has never heard a no doesn't know what to do when life shows her the first real rejection. And that moment comes. It always comes. And when it comes, beauty stops being armor and turns into rubble. She was applauded for existing. She believed that was enough. But time has a cruel way of tearing away the masks that youth sustains. And when the applause falls silent, the woman who always had everything begins to discover what she never had. Structure. Because a beauty that has never been challenged by reality becomes a castle built on sand. And the collapse doesn't warn. It arrives like a silent storm and sweeps away everything that seemed solid. It is at this moment that beauty ceases to be present and becomes a prison. The woman who was always desired begins to be avoided. Those who once orbited around her begin to disappear one by one. And what does she feel? Rejection? Yes, but worse than that, confusion. Because they never learned to prepare her for the idea that charm can have an expiration date, not on the face but in the soul. And when the internal enchantment dies, not even aesthetics can resist. She was conditioned to associate her value with the reaction of others. She never built self-esteem, she only accumulated self-image. And when the image cracks, whether due to age, behavior, or saturation, a void appears. And this void is frightening, because it was never filled with truths. It was filled with social dopamine, with emotional filters, with the illusion that the whole world existed to validate her. Dr. Orion explained, these women live with broken mental models. They were trained to respond to positive reinforcement, not correction. They live like spoiled queens in a castle that only existed in the minds of men who wanted to conquer them. And when men realize that conquering them means living with outbursts, jealousy, chronic insecurity, emotional manipulation, they leave. Because as he says, beauty does not compensate for madness. But many men learn this the hard way. The tragedy lies in the fact that she sabotages herself. Without realizing it, she learns to use the power of beauty as a shield, as a sword, as a currency. But she does not learn to use it as a mirror. And any power that does not become self-knowledge becomes a trap. She begins to manipulate, test, challenge, dramatize. All of this unconsciously as a desperate attempt to maintain control, to keep eyes on her. Because deep down, she feels that, without the theater, the stage collapses. And she doesn't know who she is away from the audience. Robert Greene said that seduction is a subtle art built on fascination, not on chaos. The powerful seductress is not the one who screams, demands, cries, explodes. She is the one who enchants through silence, mystery, and emotional intelligence. But these women, deprived of the truth from an early age, lose the ability to develop this depth. Because they never needed it. It was never demanded of them. Just smiling was enough. Just being there was the prize. But now, the game has changed. Beauty then becomes a curse, because it starts to attract what she no longer wants. Superficial men, disposable relationships, repetitive cycles of involvement and abandonment. And she starts to believe that all men are the same. But she doesn't realize that the problem is not the man, it's the filter. A filter created by a lifetime of listening to what she wanted to hear, not what she needed to hear. This is where emotional instability arises, not as a natural trait, but as a symptom of identity collapse. She reacts badly to simple criticism. She interprets feedback as an attack. She lives between extremes: love and hate, desire and contempt, affection and aggression. The emotional roller coaster is not charm, it is camouflaged despair. It is an inflated ego trying to survive with shallow self-esteem, and society once again reinforces the chaos. It calls her temperamental, intense, difficult to deal with, as if it were an added charm. It is not. It is a disguised scream. And the cruelest thing? Self-sabotage becomes the norm. When she finds a good man, she tests him. When she finds someone who tells the truth, she rejects him. Because the truth hurts more to those who have been trained not to deal with it. She falls in love with those who ignore her and despises those who truly see her. Because truly seeing her means breaking the spell. And the spell is all she has. This is how she single-handedly loses the game she seemed to be winning. She sabotages opportunities, destroys relationships, and locks herself in increasingly dense emotional bubbles. And all of this in the name of a narrative that was never hers. It belonged to others. To men who wanted something in return. To the society that deified her without purpose. To the culture that taught her that being desired was the pinnacle of existence. But desire without connection is just an addiction. The beautiful woman at this point doesn't need another compliment. She needs a mirror. She needs someone to tell her, you are lost. And it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to get out. But that someone almost never comes. Because the only kind of man who could hold her in this collapse is the kind she has learned to reject. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. Somewhere in this woman's past, or rather, in the absence of such a place, is the turning point that could have prevented everything. Because there is only one type of man who has the power to keep her connected to reality, even when surrounded by applause, filters, and lies. Who does not want to seduce her, but to structure her. Who does not bow down to beauty because he has seen the world from the inside. This man has a symbolic name: father. When there is a father, or an older brother, or a strong, upright male figure who says no with love, who applies consequences, who demands dignity, something powerful happens. She learns that the world does not exist to serve her. She understands that her value is not in the mirror, but in her posture. And that is rare, because even these men, when they exist, fail. Their love for her is great, but sometimes it is weak, and a weak love in the face of feminine beauty is useless. It gives in, it protects too much. He doesn't correct her. And then, even the best lose control of her reality. The result? The woman grows up without reference. And when she finds a man who dares to correct her, she attacks him. When someone shows her a mirror, she breaks it. Because truth for someone who has lived on lies is violence. And the only man capable of withstanding this initial emotional violence is the man who doesn't need it. The man who doesn't play the game of seduction. Who isn't there to score points, but to keep his bearings. This man is rare, and even when he does appear, she rejects him, because everything inside her screams, this is not safe. Her mind has been trained to seek comfort, not growth. And the truth, the real truth, is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. The woman who has the courage to face the discomfort of a real mirror begins to be reborn. She sees her own contradictions, her own manipulations, her own traumas, and for the first time she feels something genuine: connection. But here's the brutal detail. Most women don't want connection. They want control. She wants to keep the theater going, and in this desire for control, she pushes away all the men who could really transform her. Not because they are bad, but because they are honest. And honesty, as Dr. Orion said, doesn't get laid. It bothers, it confronts. It forces you to grow. What remains then are the same fragile, sycophantic men willing to do anything except the truth. Men who feed her like an addiction. And she, lost in her own reflection, confuses this with love. But love without a mirror is just another form of lying. And the lie that destroys the most is the one that comforts. In the end, beauty is just the stage. Chaos is born in the script. And this script was written by a cowardly culture, by needy men, by dysfunctional families. The secret to saving her has always been in the presence of someone who would say, you are not above the consequences. Someone who loved so much, who was not afraid to displease. But who has the courage to love like that? who is willing to hold up the mirror, even knowing that they might be hated for it. Few. Rare. And these rare ones are the ones who could prevent the beautiful woman from becoming a goddess in free fall. Maybe she is not crazy. Maybe she is just addicted to a world that taught her that being beautiful was enough. Maybe the chaos she carries is just the natural reaction of a soul that has never had contact with reality. And if that is the case, beauty was never the problem. The problem was silence.